Well, first let me thank the Sacramento Running Association, Ellen Moore and her crew for putting on a delightful evening. It's not often we get this diverse a group of runners together. Short distance runners, long distance runners, kids, older folks. It's a celebration of the great running community we have in Sacramento. When I look back at how I got here, it's been kind of a strange trip. I was standing in the CIM Pace tent this year, and one of the guys that's done all the CIMs along with myself and Dennis Zyloff, a few other guys here, Steve, he comes up and he says, "Hey, Tweet, you know what? Of all the guys that are streaking in this race, I think you might have a chance to be the last guy standing." I said, "Oh, really? Why is that?" And he says, "Well, you're young." I said, "Well, yeah, younger than the other guys, let's put it that way." And he says, "Yeah, and I think you have a genetic advantage." And I was like, really, the clean living and training and all that wasn't the secret. But luckily tonight I brought with me some people that got me to where I am tonight, because it's been a long journey. You can imagine what it's like when you come home as a junior in college and at Christmas time and you tell your folks, "Hey, I'm going to sign up for this 50-mile run because I have to finish this 50-mile run to get into this 100-mile run. And it's this trail that goes from Squaw Valley to Auburn, 100 miles. It's the ultimate challenge. I think I want to do that." And they're just like looking at each other going, "Hey, slow your roll there, player." You know, kind of like, what happened to this guy when he went away to school? But my parents have been there for every 25 finishes that I've had at Western States. It was Mom's job to cook the pre-race meal. So if you want to finish Western States, talk to my mom about the secret Twietmeyer recipe. It's got a pretty good track record, I think. And she was the chief worrier about what I'd look like when I came to an aid station. And my dad, he paced me in the early years. And he's never forgiven or forgotten the pace job in 82, because I'd finished in 81 in a pretty decent time. And he heard all the stories from my sister who had paced me the first year. And he says, "Wow, this is going to be a blast." And I rolled into White Oak Flat, and I was sicker than a dog. And I did nothing but complain and walk for 4 hours, and he had to listen to all that. And then I felt a lot better at one aid station, and then spent 3 hours trying to drop him. And he always says, "Yeah, what a lot of fun that was. I just listened to you complain, and then you tried to leave me behind." But they always said that Western States is the only race that you prepare for 6 months, you run for 24 hours, and then you tell stories for 6 months. And then it starts all over again. Had I told them at the beginning that they were signing up for a 25-year enlistment, I'm not sure they would have been okay with that, but I think it all kind of turned out okay in the end. Yeah? Yeah? Oh, okay. Shu called me for the press release on this evening, and it's the only time he stumped me with a question. He said, "You know, Tweet, for all the things you've done, what do you think is the most important, most thing you're most proud of?" I said, "Well, God, I don't know. You know, 92, the first time I ever won the race was kind of a breakthrough. I'd run it 10 times. I don't know why it took me so long to figure it out." And then it started out as kind of a bumpy year. We had our second son, and he was born with some disability. So it was a little kind of a emotional year for me. But when I thought about it a little bit longer, John, I said, you know, the real goal and the real accomplishment there was really doing all that running in 1990 and not coming home from a 10-hour run in the canyons and finding all my gear on the driveway with a for sale sign on it. Because that was the busiest time of my life. I was working full-time as an engineer and a manager at HP. My wife and I were adding to our family. We had boys in 1990, 92, and 94. And I was volunteering in the fire department, and then I joined the Western States Board, which was a phenomenal privilege to serve with. And that was just a time where I leaned on my family a lot. And my wife was always there for me. And it's, you know, working all weekend, and then see you on Saturday, I'll see you tonight. And she had to take care of the kids. And I know that I couldn't have done it without her. A lot of the accomplishments I've had, I've been standing on top of the shoulders of others. And it's my wife, Kathy, who's sitting by my parents there, who was the one that did that. I was telling that story to Max Baucus, the U.S. Senator from Montana, when he was at Western States one year, and he says, you know, we have a measure of that. I said, "What's that? The chance that you come home from a training run and find all your gear on the driveway with a for sale sign on it?" And he says, "Yeah, we call that the DTI." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He says, "Well, it's called the Domestic Tranquility Index. It's something that you have to manage very closely as a distance runner to make sure you don't come home and find all your gear on the driveway." And let me just say, I went deep into the red on the old DTI in my years as a runner, and I've been trying since my retirement from Western States Running to even the docket there. And I don't know, how am I doing? No? Still got some homework? Yeah. That's what I thought. And I brought my son Austin with me tonight. He's my youngest. My middle son, Trevor, couldn't make tonight. He's at home babysitter, and my oldest son is in grad school, so he couldn't make it. But Austin, you might recognize him. He works at Fleet Feet, sells you shoes. He was in a couple of those pictures, and the spooky part about Austin, actually, if you look at that picture right there, he's the little guy on the right. And the more pictures that Joe McClatty takes of me, the more it looks like Austin and I are running in perfect sync. So that kid might have some running chops. I don't know yet. There's times I know that we went out for a 2-hour run the other day, and he's already kicking my butt. But a lot of people look at family, and although they're supporting there, a lot of times it steals time from you running. You know, that's just the way it is. You have to balance that. But I always felt that all the time that I ran, I was a better runner because of my family, not because of the time that I spent away. And I know that I wouldn't have become the runner I am without my family. So thank you. And of course, ultra running is a weird sport. I mean, it's not one that you're out by yourself. We have pacers and crew people that help us along. We're out there running for days at a time. Aid station people, I know there's a lot of people here that have run aid stations that I've run through, and I've tried to be as cordial as possible. But if every time I didn't say thank you, well, hopefully I'm making it up tonight, because thank you. It's a really great part of our sport, and you can't get to the finish line without help in that sport. And in particular, I want to call out the race directors that are here in the audience, and I know there's several of them. They're all really good race directors that have done big events in our sport. American River 50, Western States, cool. You go down to the CIM, all of those race directors provide their time and effort, and it's us, the athletes, who stand on their shoulders when we're able to achieve what we do. People often ask me, they say, hey, Tweet, how did you get started in running? Did you run in high school? I said, no, I didn't run in high school. Well, I went to college, no. He said, well, how'd you get started? I said, well, it was a really happened chance that John described a little bit, or was in the movie. It was, I was a 19-year-old kid going to junior college, and I didn't know anything about running. Actually, I was a better golfer than I was a runner, so you can imagine what kind of shape I was in. And I was sitting in the library one day, just as my sister had started running. I was reading through this Runner's World magazine, and I came across this note in the back where in those days, there were hardly any events, but it said 24-hour run, Woodside High School, Woodside, California. Well, I didn't live a mile away from that track, and I worked right across the street. So I said, hey, I got to see this. This has got to be something. So I went to work that day, happened to cross that track, and what a sight it was. People of all shapes and sizes, young folks, tall folks, older folks, wider folks. It was everything you could see. And the more I watched, the more I was intrigued. My dad tells that story. He said, well, anything that looks so boring as watching people run around in circles for 24 hours. Yes, it was around the track over and over and over. The more we stayed there, the more intrigued we were. And that was the day that Don Choi broke the American record for 24 hours at 138 some miles. I watched Don, but he was so far out of my league. He was a small guy, and he kind of ran leaning backwards a little bit, but he went on to set several American records, postman from San Francisco. I couldn't identify with Don, so I was watching these other two people really closely. And the first one was this really burly guy. And you would think he was the last guy you'd think would go 24 hours because he was built like a 49er fullback. Strong legs, and he had these red shorts on with a little extra pouch to hold his hard candy so he never run out of energy. But the more I watched him, the more I marveled at him because he had this super efficient stride, no wasted energy. He barely, got his foot above the cinders in the track. You could almost hear him going around the track because he'd scrape because he never wanted to spend any extra energy. He wasn't the fastest guy out there, but he never slowed down and he never stopped. Note to self that day, what I learned, hey, get efficient. Don't slow down, never stop. It doesn't matter what your body looks like, just keep going. Well, the guy that I was watching that day was Dick Collins. Well, let's just say that day I wanted to be like Dick Collins. He became my hero. 2 more years on that same track, I ran my first 100-mile run. It wasn't the fastest time around. It's under 23 hours. But as I finished that, Dick was on the track that day, and he came by and he shook my hand, and I knew that day that I'd made it. I'd been acknowledged by the guy that I thought was my hero. Of course, Dick didn't really stop to shake my hand. It was more of a drive-by handshake because Dick was in the 6-day run that day. I was doing like the kids' junior run, the fun run. I did my 100 miles and went home, and Dick was going for another 5 days. But what I learned from Dick is hard to measure. He was a great man, and the greatest honor I've ever had in running was 1997 when Dick passed away in early 1997, but he was signed up to run Western States that year. Norm Klein, the race director, came to me and he said, would you be interested in carrying Dick's number through the race? Well, I was the 3-year returning champion that year, and that has a lot of pressure involved with it, but I never felt more pressure than carrying Dick's number to the finish line that day. And we made it successfully. Dick and I had a lot of nice conversations that day, but I learned more from that man. So that was lesson number one for me as an ultra runner. But there was a woman on the track that day, equal time for the women, again, like we said earlier. And she was completely different than Dick. See, Dick ran like a sewing machine, very finely groomed stride. And this woman was anything but that. She had kind of knock-kneed, and her one leg went out one way, and her right leg kind of swung around. She had arms kind of went a little more side to side, to front to back, and she kind of leaned forward a little bit with her head down. And I said, wow, she surely didn't graduate from the Rich Hanna School of Perfect Strides. I mean, you'd get her up there, and you'd pick her apart, right? I mean, you watch Rich run, and he's like a human metronome. He passes you, and you don't even know he was there. And so I'm watching this woman, 49 years old, and as strong as Dick looked, this woman looked on the verge of frail. Skinny, tall, lean. And that little forward lean made her stare down a little more at the track than out above, but it looked like she was trying to stare down the track. Like that track was going to yield to her over time. And she was signed up for the 100-miler that day, not the 24-hour run. She wanted to go 100 miles as fast as she could. Well, the more we watched, we thought, and my dad and I looked, you think she's going to make it another lap? Another mile? Another hour? And sure enough, she just kept going and going and going. Note to self, don't worry about what your stride looks like, just focus on the task, and if you keep at it, it will yield. Well, when it was all said and done that day, the woman I was watching was Ruth Anderson. Well, Ruth ran 16:50:47 that day as a 49-year-old, and this was not but 6 years after Boston let the first woman run in the marathon, and 6 more years before women were invited to run in the Olympic marathon. Ruth is a legend in our sport. If you don't know her, well, she's just a marvelous woman. Still comes back to Western States as often as she can. But how could a budding runner have 2 better role models to learn from than Dick and Ruth? And what I wouldn't pay to run one more mile with the 2 of them, just to get some more wisdom from them. So, and to end, Ruth, Dick, wherever you are tonight, here's a big thank you from that beady-eyed 19-year-old kid that did nothing but stare at you that day. Because you showed him everything he needed to know to go from a wannabe runner to a Hall of Famer. Thank you.